Dan Siegel talks about brains and adolescence. Many of the things he says are spot on. Like this.
What is adolescence all about? Well, the idea is that adolescence is a time of immaturity. The idea is that adolescence is a time that you just have to get through. The notion that adolescence is actually full of raging hormones as a period of time, those are actually not true.
It's very good of him to reject the myth of raging hormones. Later in his talk he will, however, use other bad science to demean and degrade young adults in other ways. Oddly, Mr. Siegel never tells us what he thinks adolescence is, nor does he tell us why he believes it exists.
Another myth that we need to debunk is the idea that adolescents need to totally exclude adults from their lives in order to really grow in their independent way.
I have never heard anything like this. What I hear constantly is that young adults aged 14 to 18 are unable to think rationally. And so they need parents and teachers to make all their decisions for them. Everybody in society today thinks that good parenting means you treat your sons and daughters like 5-year-olds until their mid-20s.
In fact, adolescents need adults through their lives, but genetically it appears that adolescents, in fact, need to push back on the parents who raised them.
Siegel never says what he means by adolescent, which is kind of a shocking omission. Assuming he means teens aged roughly 14 to 18, they pretty clearly need to learn how to be adults from other adults. He is correct when he says that isolating this group from other adults does not help them grow up.
What puberty, of course, is the development of the sexual organs of the testicles in boys and the ovaries in girls, and it allows for sexual maturation. And it happens at different periods for boys and girls, about 1.5 years later for boys.
Siegel is wrong about this. Puberty is not only sexual development. It is complete development of the whole person. Bone, muscle, glands of all sorts. The whole body changes during puberty. The brain is no exception.
But adolescence doesn't always correspond to the onset of puberty. So while they generally do, those terms are different. So you can have an individual enter adolescence even if puberty is delayed. And the opposite is also true. You can have someone start in early puberty, but adolescence doesn't begin. So they're not exactly the same.
The order and speed of change of different body parts varies by individual. Siegel's claim that adolescence is something unrelated to puberty is batshit crazy nonsense.
And while hormones that are secreted from these organs of the body do rise, the changes in the way your mind functions and the way your behavior is and the way your relationships are during adolescence, we believe is not due to these hormonal shifts, but rather it's due to specific changes in the brain.
Siegel wants to replace the old myth of raging hormones with the new myth, the myth of the undeveloped brain. Siegel yaps endlessly about adolescence, but he is very confused about what he means by the term.
This adolescent period, in the old days, like about 150 years ago, puberty began at around 15 or 16 years of age. But now, when do girls begin to have menses? Does anyone know the average age? Around 12, some kids it's 11, some kids even 9 or 10. And we don't know why it's gotten that early.
Historically 16 as the age of puberty is unusually late. The Industrial Revolution was bad for our health, and so we grew up slower in that era. What we're seeing now, with young people becoming adults at ages 11, 12, and 13 is a return to our normal, natural, healthy state. Siegel continues by saying that in the 19th century, adolescence ended at age 18, because
people would generally get married, take on a job, and take on adult responsibilities. Around 18, You'd have 2 years of this period between childhood dependence on adults, pushing away from adults, and getting ready to establish yourself outside the nest, and then establishing yourself as an adult in the community around 18. 2 years.
Here he makes a couple of mistakes. 150 years ago, getting married didn't necessarily mean going out on one's own. Extended families were real. 3 or 4 generations sometimes lived in the same house, or in dwellings right next door. Many, if not most people, were never independent of their families. They lived together, worked together, paid bills, and raised children together. Sometimes with aunts, uncles, and cousins. Siegel is wrong about the social and economic position that 18 to 25-year-olds were in 150 years ago. Siegel's use of false information as a premise make it really clear that his conclusions are wrong. Question: if society could accept 18-year-olds as adult members of society in the 1800s, why can't we now? Notice that he uses 150 years ago as his baseline. Why that particular era? What about some other time and place and culture? Among the ancient Hebrews 3,000 years ago, females went through puberty around age 12 and were accepted as adult women in their society at that age. They held a ceremony, the bat mitzvah. There was no adolescence. As their bodies became biologically adult, their societies made them socially adult. The ancient Romans had a ceremony for boys on their 14th birthdays. They received the toga virilis, the symbol of manhood. Socially, they became adults simultaneously with biological adulthood. There are thousands of similar examples of rites of passage from cultures in every corner of every continent. Almost all of these rituals are timed to coincide with biological adulthood. When a young person goes through puberty, they are accepted by their tribe as adults.
You are 13 and I am in my early 20s.
But I'm a man. The rabbi said so.
No, you are not a man. It takes a long time to become a man. I mean, half my friends aren't even there yet.
American culture of the last 20 years is a bizarre outlier, in that it has established a huge, abnormal gap between growing up biologically and being accepted as an adult by society. Siegel talks about this gap.
How long is it now?
Everybody seems to think it's funny. Basic facts contain no humor. But the idea that 20 or 30-year-olds are children always gets big laughs. Why?
It's certainly longer than 2 years, right? Let's do some numbers. If it starts around 11 or 12, 13, let's say 12, and it ends around 24, or some people say 34, it's certainly a dozen years of life, the second dozen years of life.
So Siegel tells us that adolescence, whatever that is, ends at age 24, or maybe 34. He tells us that it lasts 12 years, but also maybe 20, but he never says what it is, or how he knows when it ends. Siegel claims that it lasts 6 times longer than before, or maybe 10 times longer, because he has no idea when it ends. The only rational conclusion here is that 150 years ago people treated 18-year-olds with respect, and called them adults. Whereas now, people like Siegel refuse to recognize their adulthood and force them into the status of second-class citizens called adolescents.
Not 2 years, so it's extended 6 times as long, and in some cases, literally, it's going to be 2 decades.
If we as a society made it 2 years, then later 12 years, then we can also make it 30 years, or just 2 weeks, right? Or we can eliminate it altogether. There is no outside power forcing us to treat our young adults like toddlers. We can stop any time we want. There is no need for us to pretend that adolescence exists. We created the concept and we can eliminate it, or make it as long or short as we want.
So this is a big change. So right there are going to be stresses about this being a period of transformation like this.
Previous versions of this video discuss the mental health crisis among young adults in the USA. Recent evidence of various types, however, show that the situation is not as dire as we thought it was just a few years ago. There is still cause for concern. The psychological well-being of our sons and daughters is a serious matter. But even if it wasn't, we should still treat them with basic human decency, simply because that's the right thing to do. Treating teenagers like shit is evil. Don't do it.
What do we know about what's actually changing? If it's not the hormones that are changing and it's happening earlier for reasons we don't know why, puberty and the onset of adolescence, we believe, what is actually happening?
Our children are becoming adults at historically normal ages, from about 12 to 15, but our society is refusing to respect them as adults until sometime in their late 20s. And our society is using fuzzy pictures of brains from MRI machines to justify the horrendous bigotry our young adults face.
My two kids, who are still adolescents, one is 19 and a half and the other is 24.
Totally batshit crazy nonsense. No science anywhere ever supported the idea that 24-year-olds are adolescents. Please see my video about the science of brain development and the clickbait nonsense that created this really stupid urban myth. Meanwhile, have a nice day.